How would you motivate yourself if you didn't have those? Is it okay for someone to go get help? Should they talk to someone?
I look at Kobe Bryant, I look at Michael Jordan, Jeff Bezos, and different people. They had tough days, but they powered through it. The biggest thing I started doing to help me was researching learning styles.
Learning style is basically a language within a language. You need it translated to your format so that you can absorb it.
Got to stay busy and always got to be venturing out for new opportunities and ways to develop yourself. So I was doing like 60 job applications. I just realized at some point you just got to get the work done, and you just need to find one company to say yes just to get that first opportunity. I started looking at life like a video game. You can press X all day on a fighter game to get through level 1 to 3, but at some point in time the level is going to be so difficult you're going to have to learn a different combination. I want to be considered the best, and if I'm not the best, guess what? I'm going to be next to the best, and I'm going to be learning from them every single day.
Hi, I'm Zane with Zane Engineers Life. Today we got a special guest in the studio, actually online. We were going to be in the studio, but now we're online. This is one of my former students, absolutely amazing young man. He's recently graduated and gone out and taken the world by storm. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Drissel Yilla. I graduated from Kennesaw State with my mechatronics engineering degree with my minor in industrial engineering quality principles. I graduated with my certification in my green belt in Six Sigma lean manufacturing, my basic of PLCs, and my mechanical engineering design certification for SolidWorks.
Man, that's absolutely amazing. How long have you been graduated now, Drissel?
I graduated summer of 2020, so it's been about 2.5 years, just about.
Okay, absolutely. How many different positions have you had? Did you start with one company and you stayed with one for a while? Have you kind of talk me through your early career, kind of from when you graduated, what you thought it was going to be, to kind of what it's happened over the last couple of years?
So I guess my aspect is a little bit more interesting. So during my time in college, I actually had interned with Lockheed Martin with the Fleet Ballistic Missile Program. That was pretty cool experience. That exposed me into the corporate lifestyle, corporate world, and nonetheless with one of the biggest well-known companies in the world. And then from there, I came back to Georgia. I was still in college this whole time. So I used my experience, leveraged that to get a part-time plant engineering job with UPS, working at a fully autonomous facility, helping manage mechanics, making sure that they are completing their day-to-day tasks, maintenance. I even worked in the control room where I would control the whole building, dealing with breakdowns, helping coordinate, making sure resetting like different VFDs and things of that nature from my aspect, or in helping the mechanics figure out the problems and issues from a technical standpoint. And then from there, I actually did another internship with Caterpillar during the summer with their skid steers. Working in the facility, I actually helped on a project to redesign the floor layout. That was pretty cool.
Okay, Drissel, so talk me through. So you finish, you graduate, and then COVID hits. And what happens? Do all the jobs dry up? Does suddenly nobody knows what's going on? You're trying to interview online? Like, what did you think it was going to be? And then how did that compare to how it actually turned out?
I was just expecting, originally I wanted to move to Texas and do engineering somewhere in Texas, begin my life. I always believe in pushing yourself to new opportunities, going outside your comfort zone. So I felt like moving to Texas, especially seeing how their engineering field is playing out, is definitely like new world. And I wanted to just be a part of that. But then COVID kicks off. I'm applying for jobs like crazy, like pushing in like 20, 30 job applications per day. Then I realized I had to bump it up to like 60. So I was doing like 60 job applications. I just realized at some point you just got to get the work done, and you just need to find one company to say yes just to get that first opportunity. So a company named Vanderlande reached out to me, hired me on as a controls engineer.
Now, take me back through there for a minute, Drissel, because a lot of people, they're looking for jobs, and they're looking for jobs now. They're graduating, or maybe they've been out a year or two, and they're not super excited about the way their career is going, so they're getting themselves back out there. And from most of the ones I talk to, they apply to 3 or 4 or 5 jobs. You're telling me you applied to 60 different spots, and you just kept doing it every single day over and over and over until somebody said yes. Talk me through your mindset. Like, what were you thinking? Like, what made you actually do that? Like, what gave you the drive and the knowledge to know that one more no just gets you closer to yes, right?
Yes. So there was an aspect where I went through a period of time after graduation, like post COVID. It was still kind of a weird time period. I was feeling sad, a little depressed to a certain extent, but then like I just started asking myself certain questions, watching certain YouTube videos that started explaining ways to search for jobs, and just understanding that like obviously if I'm not receiving the opportunities or get being reached out to, there's something I'm doing wrong, or there's a lack of information that I have in this situation. So like that's when I started like just researching ways to find jobs. And actually the interesting part is I have a friend who's a retired veteran, and like he was telling me how he was receiving like assistance at the time, but they required him to apply for like 40 to 50 jobs a day to receive the assistance. So in my mind, it became a thing where I understood like if the government is requiring this from him, then that just means there's some type of understanding there that like the more numbers you put out, the more you push out, the more likely you're going to be seen, because there's a whole system behind it. And just because you're applying for the jobs doesn't mean necessarily they're looking at the job post.
Well, talk me through that, Drissel. So, okay, you're a smaller school, you're minority, you're getting told no constantly. It's COVID. You don't have a job. Bills are coming in. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do in the world. Everybody just keeps telling you no. How do you power through that? Because a lot of people are going to turn that into victim mentality. They're going to go into a hole. They're going to sit in depression on the couch. I'm sure you probably had some tough days, didn't you?
Most definitely, but like I'm a person that studies the greats. So like I look at Kobe Bryant, I look at Michael Jordan, Jeff Bezos, and different people. They had tough days, but they powered through it. So there's a standpoint where like I understood like I'm at a certain point and I'm trying to get to another point. And at the end of the day, if I want to be considered one of the greats or I want to keep elevating, there's an aspect where I have to just figure out how to get past that difficulty.
Talk me through it, man, because a lot of people think if I ask for help, if I go get mental help, if I go get therapy, that there's something wrong with me or I'm not good enough or, all these litany of excuses. What made you actually reach out and get some help? And then maybe if you can talk me through, like, was it beneficial? And, if somebody's in that spot, do you think they should go too?
So I'll begin by saying like the thing I learned and what made me go looking for help, I had to understand people don't care about the help. From the outside viewpoint, you think you're weaker, you're thinking people are going to judge you, but there's an aspect when you look at another human being randomly walking on the street, you're not really looking at them in detail. You might like scan them up and down, but you're not analyzing them the same way you analyze yourself, like the little bitty aspects of yourself. So sometimes I started realizing like if I don't view people in a certain way, why am I assuming they are viewing me in a certain way? So, like, I had to look at it from the standpoint of throughout my life, you only get to certain points because you had parents, you had people that were willing to make sacrifices and build you up. You received help throughout your whole life. It might have been viewed differently, but that's the power of perspective. So I understood that like I needed help, thing I needed to like change about myself.
Let me go into that for just a minute, Giselle. You're immigrant, you stutter, you're minority, you're having trouble in class, you're special ed. Do you think it gives you an advantage? And here's a big question I have. If you didn't have those advantages, do you think you'd be who you are? How would you motivate yourself if you didn't have those?
So I look at things from a standpoint of if you're watching a show, the characters in the show don't know they're being filmed from the standpoint of the show is just telling the story. So in the moments, I don't know any different. So there's always a viewpoint where I always felt like I can do more, so I should try to do more. There was always a viewpoint where my mother always put me in a situation to progress and grow. So like if you're always putting me in position to go achieve, I have no choice but to go achieve. I always have that chip on my shoulder of like, hey, I want to be considered the best. And if I'm not the best, guess what? I'm going to be next to the best and I'm going to be learning from them every single day. So I'm always going to constantly be around those people. And even if you're not the best at everything, there's probably a skill or something that you have that I want and I need to learn about.
All right, I want to go back to something for a minute. So, you were an athlete, you've been a university student, you're now out working. And one of the things that seems in our society everyone's totally cool with is I'll get a coach to help me in sports. I'll get a coach to help me work out. I'll get a tutor to help me in class. I'll go to the doctor for my health. But no one ever talks about our mental health, our mindset, the way we feel about ourselves, whether we're depressed, whether we're excited, whether we're anxious. Let's talk about that for a minute and go into it because you've been all of those and probably gotten help in every area. Is it okay for someone to go get help? Should they? Should they talk to someone? How impactful is it to have someone, as you said, that's professional that you can talk to and get some ideas from? Just talk me through that because there's a bunch of people that are going to see this and they're in the same spot and they're afraid to go get that help. And I'm hoping maybe you can give them a couple of good, solid reasons why they should.
So I'll say my biggest thing is when I went and sought help, I had a situation at work where like I lost like control of my emotions in front of other people, which is very embarrassing. And like for a lot of people, like we have those moments to ourselves, but rarely do we have those moments when other people see it. So that to me was that moment where like that breaking point where I was like, okay, I can either go seek help or not seek help. And like at that time, I had a manager who spoke to me and was like, don't feel embarrassed. He encouraged me, but he was like, we started talking about life and he told me a lot of things I was going through was not okay. And I shouldn't feel any lesser. And from a person who was older than me, that's not something that just any human being can withstand and just can progress through life just normal. So he encouraged me to go seek help. So as I started looking for help, I felt my whole thing was I was looking from somebody who can speak from a standpoint that lived a similar life to me that can also relate the knowledge of a therapist. So I went and saw a black man who had a beard. A lot of black men with beard were seen as a threat in society a lot of times, or perceived a certain way.
Sure.
So I wanted to go get somebody that looked similar to me, that probably experienced similar aspects of life to me. And then I met my therapist. His name was Chris. And like his story, his background of he was a quarterback in high school and he ended up becoming paralyzed later on. And he was one of the top recruits. Having somebody with that type of life and then seeing how he was able to bounce back. I never met him in person, but through camera, his personality was just so big. I felt his peace and calmness. So I just started we just started talking about life. I started getting closer with God. He started challenging my viewpoints and started showing me exercises and walking me through certain things that necessarily a lot of people not going to get, because I had to realize people always see their parents as heroes, but your parents have traumas. They're dealing with life. And a lot of times things that we perceived as kids were difficult situations for them from a standpoint where they didn't know how to get a proper outlet, where they probably wasn't emotionally supportive like you needed in the moment.
And what's interesting, like as engineers, we completely understand what it takes to make a machine run well. We know how to analyze it and look at it and test it and pull information and report on it and change out pieces. But we never really look at ourselves as the machine that we are, right? Imagine if we put the engineering into ourselves and our mindset and our body and our health and everything that we're doing that we do in some of these machines we build.
Most definitely. And that's something I started learning as I read books like Atomic Habit. Changed and shifted how I looked at like just my day to day. And sometimes I also started tapping into like the power of visualization, right? So at the end of the day, how you envision yourself in the future, envision yourself currently impacts how you try to handle things.
All right, let's take you back. What advice did you get that was completely wrong?
Oh, so my college experience wasn't like the 4 year done. I came in as an electrical engineer when we were Southern Poly. So I'm doing electrical engineer. I'm getting through circuits one. I'm just like, this doesn't interest me in the way it should. It doesn't engage me. So I'm talking to friends. At this time, this is where I'm lucky and blessed to have been surrounded by great people, and am surrounded by people who were in college that were older, that had a few degrees already. People started exposing me to industrial engineering. So I switched my major to industrial engineering with my focus in systems. So then I'm doing that. I'm really enjoying my path and everything. And then one day, me and my best friend get in an argument. He's a mechanical engineer. And he's like, what are you currently learning in systems engineering that possibly somebody with another degree or the skill set can just walk in and learn in a few days and like take your job? And that was mind blowing to me. And mind you, this is a day right before like finals and tests. We're arguing for 3 hours when we're supposed to be studying. But then that changed my viewpoint and changed my course. And I realized like right now I need to get a degree that would give me valuable skills I can put on my resume.
be an industrial engineer. That was one that you're like, all right, that may not have been the best advice. And then, hey, hurry up and get done and graduate and get a job. What are some others? Think about it for a minute. You're back, even go further back if you need to. What advice did you get that was just so far off base it doesn't even apply in the real world anymore?
Just the standpoint of like the things that you're learning in college is everything in the outside world. Sometimes when I was in college, the reinforcement that you have to have that 3.0 GPA, you have to have that 4.0 GPA. If you're doing horrible in classes, you're just not amounting to things. But then like there's a standpoint where I started learning about development. Development is so precise. Each individual person, even twins, development is so drastically different. So sometimes like the aspect of you not amounting to anything and possibly some teachers not bigging you up when tests are going horribly wrong. Because there was tests I had were 20s, 40s. Shoot, I graduated with a 2 point something GPA, but that did not dictate my career and dictate my development. It was just a small piece. And I understood these are people who necessarily aren't as invested in me as they are just invested in taking care of the class and doing what they're required to do for the class. So the viewpoint of just like, just because you're not doing well in a certain area doesn't dictate that you can't accomplish what you're doing right now. It might not just be the best environment for your development.
All right, so let's go back and let's find those guys and those girls that are in school right now, or maybe they've just graduated, like your friends you said that went out and it really didn't turn out the way they thought it was going to. What are your words of encouragement? What are some tools and techniques that maybe you've used to build this strong mindset and this strong personality and this never quit attitude? What are some things you could tell them?
So the biggest thing I started doing to help me was researching learning styles. Einstein had this quote, I think it was Einstein, but if you tell a fish to climb a tree, it'll always think it's dumb its whole life. And like I realized sometimes I'm the fish. So I started having to realize what is my learning style. Just cause like I had a friend one time, I asked him to help me study for a science class. So he cracks open a book and he just starts talking and whatever. And I was, you're not gonna use the formula to solve this? And he's like, there's a formula? And I was like, okay. I just told him close the book. We was done that night. I just understood you are not the one to help me. But then as I started going to classes, I started trying to figure out how can I learn, because audio learning is not my thing. PowerPoints is good, but it doesn't seep in, it doesn't stick. So I started taking like tests on learning styles, and then I learned I was a tactile learner. I learned best just by doing, going to try and then having somebody explain it to me afterwards of what I was doing wrong and relating the concepts in real time. Because as I'm solving problems, I have questions in the moment that dictates how I view the situation. And I'm a very conceptual based learner. I like sitting there and looking at concepts of understanding like, hey, if this is happening, relate it to this. So I'm a person that just loves to relate things, because once you can wrap your brain around the concept, everything else falls in line, because you can double check yourself in situations that you don't feel like you understand what's going on. So I started just doing that, understanding my learning style and understanding how I need to develop and taking the time to go try to learn and practice those skills.
Well, and it helps you build confidence because you realize there's nothing wrong with you, right? And see, I'm a coach, I'm a professor. I've dug into this quite a bit. And the analogy I use for people in this spot, and because basically what you're saying is go figure out how you learn and how you converse and how you take in information and how you do these things. That way you can work in those areas and work correctly. And the analogy I use with people is if you were going to learn from someone that spoke Italian and you don't speak Italian, what's the first thing you would do? You'd translate it to your native language, right? Well, I don't think people understand, and maybe you can talk to how simple it is to find out. Learning style is basically a language within a language, right? You need it translated to your format so that you can absorb it.
Yes, that's something I had to just learn how to practice. It's so deep and so difficult. Explain it, because how do you go about asking that to somebody without coming off a certain way? How is it going to be perceived? Are you being too troublesome in asking the person? Did you not build up this relationship with this person enough to go to the extent that you're asking for that help? So it's just one of those things where you have to just keep trying. And then I also, one thing I had to start learning was I'm deserving. When you don't feel like you're deserving of something, you're gonna go about asking for things in the wrong way. You're
Sure.
gonna go about asking for things in a way that's not very confident for the other person. A lot of times we always view things from our viewpoint, but I always wondering, how does this person feel in front of me?
100% and very well said. Let's expand on that for a minute. So, you've been out a couple years, you've worked, you seem to have a feel for how to get help from people. There's a large group of graduates who go out there and they're just wrapped completely in imposter syndrome. They don't think they're good enough. They don't think they know how to do it. They think they should already know how to do it. They think they're embarrassed to go ask for help because, oh, I have a degree in this. I should already know how to do it. What are some of your techniques to overcome that imposter syndrome and to actually get that senior engineer or your boss to help you?
So this is where it was interesting. During my time at UPS, I used to have to assign the mechanics work on how to work on the system. I didn't know how the factory worked. I'm a college student, just and then y'all putting me in front of grown men who's done this longer than I've been alive in some aspects. So a lot of times I'll assign them work and they'll come back and like, hey, you assigned, like, we can't do this right now because we doing this is happening, all this. So then like what I started doing is like I started learning. Just tell people you don't know. Just kill the elephant in the room. When you can tell somebody I don't know, now they change their viewpoint, because now when you're trying to act like you know and keep that composure and keep that, now they're trying to view you in a certain way. But just say I don't know, but we can work together. There's things I know, there's things you know, we can converse.
Really well said. I've got a few years on you in experience, right, Giselle? And I actually start a lot of conversations, even with my staff, with customers, with, hey guys, I'm literally the dumbest person in this room. Like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, all right, but let's work together. Let's figure out what our outcome is, and let's work together to achieve a solution.
Yeah, and then something interesting I also found out by taking that method. A lot of times, the person who is on the other side is going to learn things that are new, because now, if you have to teach somebody that doesn't know anything, doesn't have a floor, now it challenges what you really know.
I really like the way you said it a minute ago of you've got to kind of give yourself some credit too. Like, how would you know? These guys have been doing this for 30 years. They're the ones you go ask how to do it, right? You have no idea. You've never seen it before in your life. And that's okay. I love the way you said that. That's okay. Give yourself some credit. Just work hard and figure it out.
And it also brings a level of respect to them when you both can recognize it. Now I go from a like authoritative figure to a learning figure, and a lot of times people are willing to work with you if you're learning. So because 9 times out of 10, if you're dealing with mechanics, they don't really care who's in the authoritative seat, just as long as you don't interfere with their work and make them seem like their experience is lower than yours. Majority of them have put blood, sweat, and tears, injuries, and things into this thing. Where to the point where I, even with me working with mechanics, there was times where I could never get a screw off, couldn't get the screwdriver in, and they'll be like, "You're angling it wrong," and just do it like it's nothing. That understanding of our skill gap is that why I have the authoritative power and you just have the knowledge and information. If we bring those both together, we can create a situation that solves the problem, makes you happy with the work, and I get to learn.
100%. Very well said. All right, let's go back into school even earlier in life if you want to. What is some advice you got that was absolutely gold?
I would say there's like the one that I've been sticking to recently. That's not really advice, but things that people have to transverse in life. One of my friends told me that Jeff Bezos, the same year him and his wife got his divorce, a divorce is always emotionally tough for anybody. But also that same year, he also took him and his best friend to space. So there's an aspect of like, no matter what you have going on in your personal life, the trials and tribulations is just a part of life and the game of everything. And once you can recognize you're in a bad situation, that's means you're that much sooner to getting out of the situation. So with that being said, if you want to achieve a certain level, get to certain like viewpoints and standpoints in life, you have to overcome trials and tribulations. And it's just a part of life. And that's something I had to learn to accept, that what's going on in my personal life and what's going on in my career, company development, or whatever I'm doing, it's all connected and is going to interfere with each other at some viewpoint or some crossing. I had to just learn that's just a part of it and just slowly do what you can in a moment to get yourself out of it.
Okay, let's go back and let's pick that college kid up again. And they're a couple years into one degree or another, and they're struggling. They don't know if they can make it. They don't know if they've got what it takes. They might be depressed. They might be sitting at home. They're beating themselves up, right? What piece of advice would you give them?
I would tell them there's an aspect when you sign up for something. A lot of times we don't know what we're really signing up for. But you wanted to take on that challenge because you had an end goal, you had a vision, you had a reason. At the end of the day, that reason is still there. Now you're just being challenged to get to that point. If you ask for wisdom, expect to have problems because the wise know how to deal with problems because they experienced plenty of them. If you want patience, be ready to deal with difficult people because they're going to challenge your patience and teach you how to be more patient. So don't ask to be strengthened in the area of life and not expect to be challenged. So just because you're emotionally demoralized in the moment, that's just your emotion. You can recognize how you're feeling is different from how the situation actually is. And the ability to control your emotions and the ability to look at things objectively is the difference between you gaining everything you can out of a situation, finding opportunities to elevate yourself and find new ways to develop yourself. That's the difference of being able to view that, see that, and get that moment, the most out of it. And the moment I started doing that, that's when life became a little bit more enjoyable from the standpoint of I'm excited to see what I'm going to do next year. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but the mindset is if I'm constantly achieving my best and doing my best and seeking opportunities, I will eventually get to a point where I'll be happy.
100%. I cannot believe how fast the time has flown by. It feels like a second that we've been talking, but you've laid so much information on us. Um, Drissel, I just wanted to take a minute and acknowledge you and thank you for spending a few minutes with me. I'm so proud of you. I wasn't sure what was going to happen in that moment in class when I told you this wasn't for you because I wasn't sure which direction you were going to go from that. And I'm incredibly proud to see that you turned that into something amazing, right? You are the connector, you are the solution builder, you are the person that can get people to work together. So I acknowledge you for that. I appreciate you for that. I'm super proud of you. I also can't wait to see what you do in the next few years. I just wanted to kind of leave and end with this final thing here. If you had to leave right now and you never came back and everything you've ever done disappears, what's the one thing you would leave for all those coming behind you?
So this is something I think very deeply about, and as I go through my development, I always ask myself questions, right? So one thing I've recently always been asking myself is, how do I want to define myself as a man? When I walk away from everybody, what's the thing that I want them to say? What's the thing I want to be known for? I just want to be known for my impact. When you look at the greats, they're known for their impact, the ability to take somebody that was a 0 to a 10 and make them look like they're the best player alive. Everybody around me, I just want to impact for the simple fact I impact you, you grow, you impact me, I grow, and we keep impacting each other. But that's just the thing. Everything's like a chemical reaction. So I just want to, if I could leave everything, it's just the impact, the imprint of knowing the fact that the people after me learn from me and just transcend it that much more.
100%. Well, we're absolutely going to do this again because that was amazing. But again, thank you. You were absolutely amazing. I acknowledge and appreciate you greatly. And thanks for coming and joining me for a few minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all. Appreciate you, Professor Zane. Taught me how to work hard. Shoot, I only get like 4 to 5 hours of sleep, but hey, it's a payoff.
You got to get more than that, man. You got to take care of yourself. All right. So, anyway, I'm Zane with Zane Engineers Life, and we'll make you better.